Scoot over a little closer here. Sorry, Bridger. Well, welcome. Again, we've got our Friday edition of the Capital Connection to kind of give a little snapshot of the last week and what we can expect for the coming week with the legislature. And again, to begin this recording weekly edition here is that at the beginning of this, we record this, and then as soon as we stop the discussion between Bridger and I, we stop the recording, and then we use that for an opportunity for questions and answers, and then we distribute the recorded version for those folks that might be interested in seeing what's going on with the legislature, and in particular the Montana Chamber priorities, and for those folks that couldn't see it here on Friday. So one other thing too is I think about for the next 45 days, because we're officially at the halfway point here, if there are issues or legislators that you'd like to see us pull in here, we can certainly pull in some folks here to be part of this on a Friday basis. So feel free to drop either Bridger or myself an email with an idea that you might have from maybe wanting to hear about a particular topic or legislative issue, or hear from a particular legislator, and we'll make an effort to make that happen. So with that, Bridger, this week kind of ended up being a little quieter as things wrapped up, towards the middle of the week, and we're officially at the halfway point. And so now we've got 45 days behind us. We've got another 45 in front of us. But things for the last week, how did they end up for the Montana Chamber?
Yeah, well, if you asked anybody, or at least any member of the Senate, Todd, they'd tell you that it was still a long week because they got out at around midnight on Monday evening, working their way into break and getting all the bills through that they needed to meet that general bill transmittal deadline, which was on Wednesday. And so we are in the midst of this transmittal break. Lawmakers have gone home to interface with constituents and prepare for the second half. But Todd, I guess as far as what all this means for the chamber going into halftime, maybe I'll start with just a few numbers here to just give folks a sense of our presence in the Capitol and on core issues that mean a lot to business. Just overall, there have been 1,121 bills introduced to this point. And throughout the entirety of the last regular session in 2019, there were just over 1,300. And so that speaks to there was quite a bit of a crush of bills coming up through the first half. I think in total, we'll see a similar number of bills introduced in total. But as far as what it meant for the chamber and how involved we were, we of course keep track of how many bills we supported and opposed, and keep progress on that. But as far as things that the chamber supported, we've been involved so far in about 50 bills. Again, just across the spectrum when it comes to business issues. And then we have helped stop just over 30 bills that we felt rose to the level that necessitated our involvement in the hearing and with lawmakers. Bad bills involving tax increases, changes to employment law that would have created some inconsistencies for the employer, and then work comp issues were three main topics of bills that we had opposed. But just from a numbers perspective, we've been very present so far throughout the course of the first half, Todd.
And we started this session out with pretty much 4 top priority bills. How are those bills faring at this halfway point?
Yeah, well, the good news is we're really only having to worry about 3 because, and this is in conjunction with, again, great effort and determination from lawmakers and the governor's office and other stakeholders like businesses such as yourself who had called in to your lawmakers to get business liability protections for COVID passed. Senate Bill 65 passed the legislature and was signed by the governor in mid-February. It's not often that any bill gets signed by the governor in February. It has to really be one of those core priorities that everybody's aligned on and can get through the process fairly quickly. And that was a strong message that we were able to help send for business, is that we're going to make sure those liability protections are in place. And so that bill is done. That bill was effective upon passage and approval. So you now have more certainty when it comes to liability on your premises, what products you might be producing, or anything else related to the coronavirus as you continue to do the best you can to survive the ongoing pandemic. And then we have, yeah, that's right. Then we have three others that are still in the mix that have passed either the House or the Senate already and are in the opposite chamber at this point. All three of those bills had to meet general bill transmittal. One of them, of course, is a trespasser liability bill, Senate Bill 338, to ensure that as a business owner and a landowner, you're not liable for injuries sustained by unwanted people on your property, uninvited guests that you might not know about. So that's important for legal predictability. Our wrongful discharge bill, House Bill 254, we are modernizing and updating the Wrongful Discharge Act to make it more predictable for both employers and employees. That's going to be heard this week on the Senate side in Senate Business and Labor on Wednesday. So we're really excited to see the progress of that bill continue to move forward, and certainly encourage you to check out that bill, House Bill 254, and visit with any member of the Senate that you might know or have some kind of connection with, and let them know that this piece of legislation is going to be really important going forward to continue to encourage business investment and job creation. And then certainly last but not least, Senate Bill 251 has passed through the Senate. It's likely going to, well, it will be heard in House Business and Labor at some point. And this is another legal reform bill that's going to make business liability costs way more reasonable and predictable when it comes to personal injury lawsuits that might be levied against your business. So we're making good progress on all four, and really we're just down to making sure we get the last three through, Todd.
And those four bills those have been priorities that you've been working on with different sort of stakeholders since this summer. So this was not something that was cobbled together between the month of December and introduction. This is something that's been a long, ongoing sort of an effort. And so the fact that we still have three to get signed into law, and that we've got one that has been signed into law, I think is a good sign so far, but we've certainly not crossed the finish line yet.
I think we've seized a really important opportunity this session to focus on Montana's legal climate as it relates to business. With our subsidiary, the Montana Justice Coalition, we really are one of the only advocacy groups out there that focuses on what the third branch of government is doing as it relates to a predictable legal environment for business. And in a climate, especially with COVID, where we knew that tax returns and revenues might be a little bit tricky to really try and go gung-ho on major tax reform, we felt that this was another area that we really felt like there were some ideas that have been left on the shelf for a long time in divided government and legal reform. This session was really going to be a prime opportunity for us to take that moment. And right now we're making progress.
And all four of those bills hit right at the heart of legal reform.
They do.
Right? I mean, we're really focused on the legal reform, which any business can understand some of the complications and frustrations they have with litigation and lawsuits and predictability in the judicial system. So looking forward, as we start back up, Tuesday is when the legislature officially kind of starts kicking things off?
They'll gavel in Monday night to burn another day.
That's good. We'll burn a day.
Right.
One less day we've got to do. But so officially Tuesday, we start with hearings.
Yeah.
What's next week look like as far as some of the big issues, not only that are priorities to the chamber, but may be important to the business community as a whole?
Right. Well, I had mentioned already, and I think it's worth bringing up again, that our wrongful discharge bill, House Bill 254, will be heard on Wednesday in Senate Business and Labor. Check that out. Hit us up with questions. Contact any member you know, especially in the Senate Business and Labor Committee. But this is a good time also, Todd, to also review many of the Governor Gianforte's tax proposals when it comes to how to encourage business investment that way. And we've been aligned with the governor on these issues and have been supportive of these bills throughout the process. And they're all moving forward as well. And many of them are going to be heard on the other side of the legislature here next week. And that includes the personal income tax reduction bill, the Entrepreneur Magnet Act, which would exempt from from folks who start a business and keep their business going for 5 years from any capital gains tax on whatever gains they realize from their hard work and their investment in a new business in Montana. In addition to, and I'm just double checking here, yes. So on Tuesday, there's going to be a hearing on the Senate side of House Bill 252, which is the governor's tax credit for employer paid education and trade professions of their employees, which we think is a great workforce development incentive for employers. So those are just a few examples. The business equipment tax reduction, I know a lot of folks that tune into this care about that, as do we. It's a bread and butter issue for the chamber, and raising that exemption by another $100,000 in market value of business equipment could really mean a lot to small businesses. That had already had its Senate hearing after it passed the House. And so right now that's just waiting to be heard on second reading in the Senate. So that one's among Governor Gianforte's tax proposals in his comeback plan. This is the one that's on the fastest track to getting passed and signed into law. But I'd say those are a few of the big ones coming up this week, or especially in tax issues and some of the priorities that we've been involved in as far as education and workforce development. Todd.
Of course, some of the big issues yet to be resolved in the second half of the legislature are going to be related to the budget, right? And appropriations, there's a lot of work to be done there. And those are the bills that are related to appropriations. They didn't have to meet this transmittal sort of deadline. And so there's still going to be a lot of work to be done on trying to get to a balanced budget, which they're required to do is before they can adjourn, is to have a balanced budget. And with things relatively tight on the finance side of things, right, there's still a lot of action to happen as it comes to balancing budgets and looking for programs that might take a cut so that another program can be funded additionally. And so we'll be working on a lot of those sort of, or at least watching a lot of that sort of activity when it relates to appropriations in the budget to make sure that, the priorities that are aligned with what we're aligned with, at least maintain a constant path.
Yeah, Todd, and this is typical for a legislative session. The first half, you're going to see a major focus in the policy committees on those issues that have to meet that first transmittal deadline halfway point in the session. And not that the focus on policy goes away in the second half, but really for those bills that have passed one body, you're gonna likely have a positive outcome on that bill on the other side. And so the focus for many lawmakers does now turn to the budget and the appropriations committee, Senate Finance and Claims, House Appropriations, because throughout the first half of the session, especially appropriations, they met in their subcommittees that break down government by section and visit with agency heads, review what's being spent, how do we set the budget going forward, what spending cuts make sense, what growth makes sense. And so all of those evaluations happen for the most part behind the scenes. I mean, those passionate stakeholders that are involved in those particular sections of government, that's been a busy time for them as well. But now all of that work from the subcommittees come together into the full committee action. So House appropriations, there are going to be a lot more eyes on that. And for some very good reasons, especially in this session. Not only do they need to set a budget, but they're now going to need to be tackling what to do with the expected tax revenue going forward of recreational marijuana now that initiative passed. And there's certainly some policy considerations still on the table when it comes to recreational marijuana, but should it continue to go forward as the initiative had outlined, there's going to be some differences in opinion when it comes to where the revenue was directed to go, or at least suggested it should go from the initiative itself versus where lawmakers think that money should go. So that's going to be a huge subplot throughout the rest of this session. And one more I'll also mention is, and this is going to actually involve a heck of a lot more money in the near term, is there's still some money to be directed and authorized when it comes to COVID-19 relief dollars from the federal level. Yeah. And if a package that does seem to be moving forward right now in Congress does get through, there's likely going to be more dollars sent to Montana. And so when you talk about, just on its face, you got to balance the budget, which is just something you always got to do anyway. But now you got a tax revenue from recreational marijuana and potentially revenue from the federal government on COVID-19. That these are three massive questions, really, and if you really think about it, of equal weight and proportion when it comes to thought and what happens to all that money, there's going to be a lot of eyes on that, and we're looking forward to seeing what happens and being engaged when it's appropriate just as much. One of the things, Todd, that we're going to be paying extra special attention to when it comes to where we're going to be focusing revenue is education. And are we continuing to fund especially those career and technical education programs, trades education, work-based learning concepts that have been proven to work and have upskilled young people to be the most productive workers they can be for a Montana business community that's still starving for great talent. And that's why we're going to be really focused on making sure in House Bill 2, the major appropriations bill, that education and the CTE and the trades are well emphasized in that final product.
I think it's also important to note, you noted the federal COVID-19 relief package that's now in the Senate. The Montana Chamber Board of Directors had a Zoom meeting with Senator Tester on Monday, as he reached out to us to get some input on the negotiation front of, what it is that we should be arguing for, what he should be looking out for as it comes to the potential for additional dollars to the state of Montana. We had a great call with Senator Tester with the evenly divided United States Senate. Now whether you're talking to a Republican or a Democrat, they both have, a significant amount of weight. And one of the pieces that we really pushed to Senator Tester in that call was making sure that they tried to find as much flexibility for the states for any sort of dollars that come to the state of Montana, so that in Montana, our lawmakers and our governor can make the decisions on where the places that some of that federal money should go, that it would make the most sense, because Montana is dramatically different, needless to say, than Washington State or North Carolina or any place on the East Coast. So that was a good call we had with Senator Tester on Monday, and that was part of the feedback that we delivered to his office as they were looking for input on the negotiations for the COVID-19 funding pieces working through Congress now.
Yeah, so no, there's a lot to look forward to on both the federal level and at the state level in the coming weeks, and I think we're going to know a lot in just the first 2.5 weeks after this transmittal break of what's really still in the mix and what might be on the cutting room floor. So good stuff.
Okay, so with that, I think we can stop the recording and